This is For the Governed, a podcast series brought to you by Athalonz. Here are your hosts, Tim Markison and Ron Cates.
Welcome to another interesting edition of the Athalonz podcast. I'm Ron Cates. With me is Tim Markison, the CEO and founder of Athalonz. Today we're going to talk about, not always a good thing, perfectionism. Tell us about the good and bad parts of perfectionism, Tim, in your experience.
So this is from my perspective. And I've been thinking a lot about perfectionism lately. As I think I've mentioned before, I've resumed therapy to deal with some of my childhood or some of the issues I still have from being sexually abused as a child. And what's come up recently in those sections is about perfectionism. And, for me, it's really kind of been a double-edged sword. So let me kind of backtrack of how the perfectionism came into play for me. I as a result of the abuse, I had a very negative self-image of myself. And, I carried that into adulthood, where I thought I was a worthless, stupid, ugly piece of crap that couldn't do anything right. The other thing that came out of it was, as I had talked before, I played baseball. That was my dream growing up, was to be a professional baseball player. And, that was the one area of my life that I did well at. And then my father started to coach, and it was awful. First of all, he knew very little about baseball, and then the primary reason why he did this was to get the accolades of being my father, and be like, "Oh, wow, you're Tim's dad. Wow, you must be so proud. He's so good."
So, by any objective measure, you're an outstanding baseball player for your age.
Yeah.
By any objective measure, any way you could look at it, any knowledgeable coach would watch you play and be impressed.
Yeah, I mean, I was always the first kid drafted. I was always on the all-star teams. I was always starting, always, for my age, the best player.
But your dad didn't see it that way.
No.
Or he didn't express that.
No, my dad was hypercritical. I can't tell you how many times I would have a game where I'd go 3 for 4 and throw a one-hitter. And for days after that, all I would hear about was, how could I make that out, or how could I give up that hit? Not like, holy crap, 3 for 4 and a one-hitter in the same game. That's extraordinary. So it started to set up in my mind that I had to be perfect, really beyond human capabilities perfect. So kind of superhuman perfect. And it wasn't so much to get my father's praise. I really don't recall actually seeking that. I just wanted him to shut up. I got so tired of being berated by, making an out or giving up a hit, or just being human. And one of the things with baseball is, it's a human element. So, with respect to hitting, we fail 7 out of 10 times, and guys make, tens of millions of dollars a year doing that. Pitchers make, tens of millions of dollars a year and give up hits and runs. But in my environment, I had to be beyond perfect, beyond humanly reasonable, just to get my father to shut up. So that really kind of set me up for expecting to do things in a superhuman, perfectionist way.
Okay, but you're young. So even though the objective facts don't match up with what your dad's telling you, you still must absorb some of it and take it as internal. Yeah, I guess I'm really flawed at this.
Yeah. That constant critical review.
My point is, it wasn't just your dad's. You were starting to, at some point, you must have started to believe it.
Yeah, well, that fed all into the negative image that I'm stupid, worthless, and can't do anything right. Because here's evidence of it. With respect to baseball, even though I was good, I wasn't wasn't perfect. So, here's just another example of not being able to do anything right. So, that really kind of set me up for an all or nothing attitude. If I didn't care about something, didn't put any effort into it, I didn't care that I wasn't any good at it. So, through all of grade school and high school, I didn't care. I didn't study. I didn't try. And, I was a B- student. But I didn't care. The only thing I cared about was baseball. And it really kind of set up that, all or nothing perfectionist viewpoint that carried over into adulthood. And it really has been a double-edged sword for me, because it not only, did I try to do things, at superhuman levels, but it also, with respect to challenges where people said, "Oh, this couldn't be done," there was something that motivated me to try.
But that's a ridiculous bar.
It really is.
And I know for a fact that it led to incredible accomplishments, but I'm sure you didn't enjoy them in a healthy way. In some ways, it might have just been, of course, I should have done it at that super high level because it's, I have to. So now I have to take that super high level that nobody's even done before. That's not good enough anymore because I did it. So now I got to do this much better.
Yeah, and that's been the struggle for me, and that's what I'm working on in counseling. But to that point, and we have talked about this before, and there's many of these podcasts. You'll introduce me as one of the best patent attorneys in the country, and I'm always like, but right. that ties into the perfectionist. When I look back objectively at what I've accomplished as a patent attorney, I've done things that nobody else has done, and yet, with respect to this superhuman perfectionism, it's like, well, it's just my job. And so there's been no satisfaction really in that. It's just, I did it. And if I fell anything short of that, well, then it was just like, it fed into, well, you're right. You can't do anything right.
Well, just a few years ago when we met, there's no way on earth you could have said that statement out loud.
Right.
I'm one of the country's top patent attorneys. It's just a fact by any objective measure. And it's taken a few years, but now you can actually say that.
Yeah. So I am definitely making progress, but I also, have it with respect to, like my body image. I'm turning 60 in a couple months, and, and with the bike training I've done, I'm in pretty good shape. And yet, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't have that fitness model body, which I know is just idiotic for somebody my age. And to get into that kind of shape, most of them go through an unhealthy routine. So, and yet in my mind, that's the way I should look. And anything less than that is an imperfection. And it brings me down. So that, that's a lot of what I'm working on in the therapy right now, is to get rid of this all or nothing, black or white thinking, and add some gray into it, and really trying to be okay with just being human and having frailties and doing things well and doing some others not so well, and really striving to, do the best that I can and be content with the best that I can do.
Yeah, I think the big issue that I see is that you have incredible accomplishments, but you can't celebrate them because they don't seem like such a big deal to you. So I think there's, obviously that can go too far and become incredibly narcissistic, but there has to be some reality base to this where, wow, I just did a really great thing. I should be happy about that. I'm a tennis player now, and, lots of players, they make a bad shot. They're like, oh my God, that was terrible. Slam the racket. I get mad when I make a bad shot too, but when I make a good shot, I'm like, oh my God, did you see that? That was fantastic.
Yeah.
And people look at me like I'm out of my mind.
Yeah.
So I think, just to be fair to myself, why shouldn't I celebrate a great shot if I'm going to be negative about a bad shot? I mean, there's balance there.
Yeah. I like that attitude, and that's what I'm striving for as well, because, I've played some tennis, and I was that guy that was breaking rackets on bad shots. And if I made a great shot, it was like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do that all the time, which I mean, it's humanly impossible. And yet, that's what was ingrained into me growing up, is I had to be extraordinary in order to just be adequate. And I think that's the, and I've talked to many survivors of abuse, especially sexual abuse as children, and a lot of them have those same kind of characteristics. It's just really distorted view of themselves and what they need to do just to feel somewhat adequate. And so, again, that's what I'm working on now, is to, bring into gray into my black and white world and be okay with it.